Hey students, so today we talked about the beginning of Unit 3, which is an introduction to absolute value functions. And before I started talking about what they are, we reviewed what absolute value is. So absolute value is known to be the distance between a number and zero. So for example, if you were given the notation of absolute value, it's going to look like this. Two lines on the side of the front and back of a number, whether it's positive or negative. And your job is to answer what is the distance away from zero that number is. So the 3, it's right here, and the 0 is right there. How far away is 3 from 0? That is 3 spaces. So that's why the answer is 3. Over here, we have an absolute value of -3. -3 is here, 0 is here, so that is 1, 2, 3. 3 spaces away from 0. So your absolute value answer will always be a positive number. Technically, you need to remember it's distance. So if it's distance, we always talk in real world with positive numbers in terms of distance. All right, so this was actually taught to you like in 6th grade or 7th grade. So here's a couple of review of how to use operations with absolute value. My advice to you during class was to focus only on the absolute value part first. Your brain is a little bit deceiving here because it kind of looks like parentheses. So I'll show you some clarifications in a little bit. So for example, the first problem is absolute value of 9 minus 12. So ignore everything else and just look at that. 9 minus 12 is -3, but you're looking at the absolute value of -3. So therefore, now that you simplified it a little bit, you ignore what you had and now ask yourself, what is the absolute value of -3? The answer is 3. So that's the answer to this first problem of absolute value of 9 minus 12. Next, we have -3. Technically, is times the absolute value of 9 plus 2. So you're going to only focus first on simplifying the absolute value before you do anything with that -3. Like I said, your brain wants to multiply already because you're used to seeing -3 times something, and you're used to distributing that number in before anything, because that's what we told you to do. Distribute, combine like terms, then move things to the other side when solving equations. But for now, please understand parentheses and absolute value are not the same thing. So you focus on simplifying the absolute value first. So ignore the 3 and only focus on that absolute value of 9 plus 2, which is 11. So you're just going to write 11, absolute value of 11, and then the -3 in front. So now that you have that, ignore what you had and only focus on the absolute value. Absolute value of a positive 11 is just 11. And now that you clean that up to a simplified version, now look at the -3 in front being multiplied times that. So you end up with an expression that just looks at -3 times 11. So that's -33. The next problem, we're going to have, again, focus only on the absolute value. And then ignore that 8 for now. And you look at absolute value of 4 plus 1, which is 5. Absolute value of 5 minus 8. And ignore what you had before, and now look at what you have. So because you still have absolute value, clean that up with simplification of absolute value of 5, which is a 5. And then you do 5 minus 8. Ignore what you had, and now what's 5 minus 8? -3. And the last problem to practice is this one. And once again, focus on the absolute value. Ignore the 2, ignore the 3. And what's 8 minus 14? 8 minus 14 is -6. So that is -6 in absolute value. 2 in the front, plus 3 at the end. And then ignore the 2, ignore the plus 3, and only focus on that absolute value of 6. The absolute value of 6 is positive 6. So now you have 2 times 6 plus 3. And then we simplify using PEMDAS. So 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 3 is 15. And that's the answer for these problems. If you want to practice doing this in the calculator, you can. The absolute value will be found on right here next to the 9. You click on that special characters key. This comes out on your screen, and the absolute value will always be that top right corner for now. Click on that, and now the calculator is ready for you to type anything in absolute value. So if I type 9 minus 12, like this first example right here, inside the line of absolute value, I'm going to get positive 3, just like we did right there. So in class, I allowed you to practice typing all these just to make sure you verify how to type correctly the absolute value and make sure you get to these numbers as answers. Please be careful typing your minuses and negatives, as that tends to be the most common misconception.